Hey guys, Mike here. So today, I'm here to talk to you about 2005's Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, starring Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker. In Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, 3 years into the Clone Wars, the Jedi rescue Palpatine from Count Dooku. As Obi-Wan explores new threats, Anakin acts as a double agent between the Jedi Council and Palpatine and is pulled into a sinister plot to rule the galaxy. And so we have Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. So guys, today's movie was requested by no one. This one I just wanted to talk about because someone else suggested that I should watch the original trilogy, and I thought before I do that, I should watch the prequel trilogy. I've already reviewed The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, so now it's time to review Revenge of the Sith. Now, I have already talked about Revenge of the Sith in my Why I Love It review format, which is the only movie that I've actually done it in that format. I'll probably do more movies in that format, but for now, Revenge of the Sith is the only one I've done in that way. And I actually consider whether I should actually review this movie again, seeing as I already have a substantial review of the movie. But I thought, you know what, I just love talking about this film, so I figured, I'm gonna do another one. But in any case, what did I think of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith? Well, honestly guys, this is the movie that it was all building to. The entire prequel trilogy was building to this moment. And again, like I said in the Phantom Menace and the Attack of the Clones reviews, for the longest time, I didn't like the prequels. I kind of got on board the hate train and being like, the prequels are bad, they're crap, you know, all that kind of jazz. Even though when I first watched them, I remembered loving them, but then I just kind of joined the bandwagon and didn't really think about it too much. Until a couple of years ago when I thought, you know what, no, they are not bad movies. And then with a bunch of other things like the Clone Wars series, more video games, my faith and love of the prequels was restored. However, Revenge of the Sith, I never wavered on. I always loved this movie, since the very first time I saw it back in 2005. However, there were things that I did think were a bit iffy, but nevertheless, I still love this film. One of those things being Hayden Christensen's performance. His performance for the longest time was one of the things that I just thought, nah, it just does not work. This guy's not very good. And if anything, it kind of really just bogs down the movie. However, in recent years, I've really started to appreciate what Hayden Christensen does for this film, and really why he gives the performance that he does. Now, I'm going to say some things which I have already said in my Attack of the Clones review, but they do warrant repeating. Hayden Christensen does not give a bad performance in this film. He just does the job that George Lucas wanted him to do. Because George Lucas really wanted Anakin Skywalker's character to be reflecting on, you know, an older format of acting. Kind of the acting style they used in the late 40s, early 50s. And if you think of it like that, Hayden Christensen is doing a good job. Though to be fair, sometimes it does play off really well, and then sometimes it just feels like wooden acting. Because I do find that there is a reason why people don't act in this particular way now. Because with method acting becoming so much more popular, it really started to take over this older style, and really, this kind of method acting style is just so much more believable. That's not to say at no point Hayden Christensen's performance isn't believable, because there are just so many points in this movie where he does really shine. And it's especially in these moments where he doesn't really say much and he kind of allows his facial expressions to do all of the acting. Like towards the middle of the film where he's really deciding whether he should obey the council's decision to arrest Palpatine or whether he should go and try and save him to save his wife. And obviously all of this stuff had been said before, but it's really kind of shown the weight of when he's sitting in the council chambers looking out into the city and just he starts to cry. And it just says so much about the internal struggle that he's got, whether he follows the order that he's grown up with or whether he saves the woman he loves. And it's just all shown brilliantly in Hayden Christensen's performance. And as well, Anakin has so many great dynamics in this film, though I will say some of them are better than others. Like for example, I love the dynamic between him and Obi-Wan in this film. I didn't really mention it that much in my Attack of the Clones review, but in that film, you can see that they are close and they have trained for a while together, but you can also tell that there was just this underlining tension between the two of them. Like, Obi-Wan's always critiquing Anakin, he's always reminding him that he is the Padawan and he's the master. Even when Anakin makes a good call or does something impressive, Obi-Wan's always there to remind him who is the master and who is the apprentice. And sometimes these scenes can fly under the radar, but if you're really paying attention, you can always see them. Like, one of the scenes which I really think if you blink and you'll miss it is towards the end of the film when they're, you know, going after Count Dooku with the clones, and Anakin makes the call to attack the rocket thingamajig, you know, in a specific way, you know, hit at the central part. And Anakin's call brings the thing down, and he's obviously very pleased with himself. Then Obi-Wan both congratulates him and also puts him down at the same time when he says, "Good call, my young Padawan." And you can see it for a split second in Hayden Christensen's performance. His face just drops. The fact that he's done this impressive thing, and then Obi-Wan just puts him down at the same time as complimenting him. This one scene really just speaks volumes of their relationship in the first film. However, going into Revenge of the Sith, you can see that their dynamic has changed dramatically. The fact that Anakin is much more of a seasoned knight now, and he knows what he's doing. The fact that the two of them have worked together through the Clone Wars for so long, they're watching each other's back, they have witty banter all the time, they work together brilliantly. And at first, this dynamic is really shown in the opening shot of the movie, where there's no lines of dialogue, it's just them flying in their starships right next to each other in unison. Just this short sequence before you get into any of the dialogue really shows how their relationship has grown. And as well, going further into the movie, you can see that Obi-Wan has a lot more respect for Anakin now. He compliments him, he reminds him that he's doing a good job, he's telling him that he's become a much better Jedi than he could ever be. You can tell that the dynamic is definitely there, but it's built more on respect rather than a power dynamic now. Because in episode 2, Anakin was very resentful of Obi-Wan because of the way he treats him, but in this movie, you really starts to see him as much more of a mentor and a friend now. And I'll get into it more later on in the review, but it just makes the end of this movie all the more devastating. Another relationship, which I do feel is kind of hit or miss at the time, is the relationship between Anakin and Padme. And I don't think it's necessarily either of the actors' fault. It's probably more the fact that Padme isn't really given that much to do in this film. Whereas in episode 1 or 2, she was very take charge, a badass, she put herself right in the middle of the action. In this movie, she spends pretty much the whole time just kind of walking around, looking out of windows, and just not really doing all that much. Though, when the movie calls for it, she does give some amazing acting chops. For the most part, she just doesn't really do all that much in this film. You can still feel the strong connection that these two have, but I feel it would have been a little bit better if Padme was just given more to do in the movie. But at the same time, the story isn't necessarily about her, it's more about Anakin. But then, you've got one of the great powerhouse performances of the movie, Ian McDermott as Palpatine, aka Darth Sidious. For the longest time, Palpatine was my favourite Star Wars character. Now, it's kind of a toss-up between him and Ahsoka, though I do find he does kind of take the edge, mainly because of the performance that Ian McDermott gives in this movie. I absolutely love this guy in this movie. In episode 1 or 2, though he is very important, he isn't really given all that much to do, he isn't given that much screen time. It's only really in Revenge of the Sith where he becomes very important to the story, and is given so much more to do. I love the relationship between him and Anakin. The fact, for the most part, it is kind of under the radar, the relationship that they've had. It is definitely more explored within the Clone Wars, but up until this movie, you didn't really get to see that. And it's all really in these short exchanges that they have that you can understand the dynamic that the two of them have. That, though Palpatine isn't exactly his master or Jedi mentor, he has been kind of mentoring him along the way, ever since he was a small boy. And you can tell that the two of them have become very close, and why Anakin has put so much trust in Palpatine. And it's because of this relationship that Anakin is put through so much conflict. And that is really the heart of this movie, Anakin's inner conflict. And also as well, it does bring up one of the key themes of Star Wars, which carries over through pretty much all the movies. It is between the light and the dark side. Now obviously the light and the dark sides are two sides of the same coin, but really one of the other things they represent is the easy choice versus the hard choice. It kind of says that often making the right choice means making the hard decisions, which represents the light, whereas the dark side is making the quick, easy decision. Anakin is told constantly to trust in the Jedi Council, when at the same time, they don't put the same kind of trust on him. He's supposed to just blindly follow them when they're always constantly putting him down. They promote him at the behest of the Chancellor, but at the same time, they won't promote him to Master. And as the movie goes on, Anakin becomes more distrustful of the Jedi Council. And there were just so many great scenes in this movie that really go to show this. Like the fact that the Jedi Council tells Anakin to spy on the Chancellor, and he obviously says that it goes against the Jedi Code, why should I do this? And they don't really give him much of a reason to trust them. The fact that when they find out where General Grievous is, and Anakin suggests that he should go because the Chancellor asked him to go, and then the Council just kind of out of pettiness just say, we'll decide who goes, not the Chancellor, and then choose Obi-Wan over him. Now obviously they do explain that a more seasoned Jedi should go, which is definitely a good argument, but most of it is kind of made to seem like they are being petty and not wanting to do what the Chancellor tells them to do, which obviously is what Palpatine wanted. He knows how to push the Jedi's buttons and make them do what he wants them to do. But then really, one of the great lines which really goes to show Anakin that there's just no difference between the Jedi and the Sith is the line that Palpatine says at the start of the film after he kills Dooku, where he says he was too dangerous to be left alive. Obviously, something you expect a Sith to say, but then later on in the movie, you hear Mace Windu say the exact same thing about Palpatine. And it's just in this line that he sees that There's just no difference. Why should I stick to this one side when this other side can save my wife? Again, it's just brilliant storytelling. But then obviously going back to Palpatine, the performance he gives in this movie is just phenomenal. Honestly, I can't think of another character in cinema that speaks the way Palpatine does. He has these really odd inflections on every single word. He shows that he's conniving, powerful, and he also manages as well to balance a really campy performance at the same time of being really menacing and serious. Basically, I haven't got enough good things to say about Ian McDermott in this movie. He is just phenomenal. But again, going into one of the other themes of this movie, for the longest time, people said that the darkest chapter in the Star Wars saga was Empire Strikes Back. And for the longest time, that was definitely the case. But that was until Episode 3 came out. This movie goes to some incredibly dark and disturbing places. Obviously, like I said before, Anakin's journey toward the dark side, but some of the other things that happens in this movie, like how Anakin actually gains more dark side power by going to the Jedi Temple and killing all the Jedi, killing younglings, the despicable things he does in this movie are just nothing short of horrific. And that brings me into the defining moments of each of these trilogies. For the original trilogy, the defining moment for the generation of Star Wars viewers was where Darth Vader says, "I am your father," to Luke. That moment changed the whole direction of the franchise. And like I said, defined a generation. Whereas in the prequel trilogy, it's gotta be the Order 66 sequence. Everything about this sequence is just phenomenal. The performances, the score, just the sheer devastation of it. And one of the ways you can really tell how this defines the whole era of the prequel trilogy is the fact that in so many other animations or video games, there's always a scene where it is explored further. Like in Jedi Fallen Order, you do have the Order 66 scene. In the Clone Wars animated series, you have Order 66. And each of those scenes are just always the highlights of their respective franchises. Order 66 was one of the great ways of leaning into the darker side of the Star Wars franchise. And it's just so superbly done. And then, obviously, it wouldn't be a Star Wars movie without a great lightsaber battle. In Revenge of the Sith, we're treated to not one, not two, but 5 separate lightsaber battles, which in quality terms, they do definitely vary. In the first lightsaber battle between Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Count Dooku, that is definitely more of a character-driven one. Though it does have some impressive choreography, what this scene was really about was pushing Anakin, Count Dooku kind of goading Anakin into using some more of his dark side power, and that does definitely come across. Then the next one, between Obi-Wan and General Grievous, is for me a little bit hit and miss. While I would say it is definitely well choreographed, the CGI in General Grievous does look amazing, and it does kind of show a different kind of lightsaber battle than we're used to. The reason I would say this scene kind of misses the mark for me a little bit is the previous version of General Grievous that we saw. In the original Clone Wars series, when we first see General Grievous, he's fighting off 6 Jedi, a couple of Padawans, a couple of Knights, and some Masters as well. And as well, I would say this is one of the only other lightsaber battles, other than Darth Vader and Luke's first encounter, that is genuinely terrifying. General Grievous in this scene was an unstoppable, merciless monster in this scene. And in this scene, he took on some seriously great Jedi Masters, and he made it look like they were nothing. But when it came to Episode 3, it just seemed like General Grievous had really been downgraded. But obviously, there is some context to this. The fact that General Grievous was fighting at his full power before, but then going into Episode 3, he had his chest crushed, so obviously he was a little bit weakened. And it could be easy enough to say that Obi-Wan is just that powerful that he manages to just deal with General Grievous easily. But I do really feel like it kind of takes away from General Grievous a bit. The fact that he went from this unstoppable, merciless force to this kind of inconvenience, really. Still a good fight nonetheless, though. But then the next lightsaber battle we get is between Palpatine and some more Jedi Masters. One of which being Master Windu. Now, when I first saw this scene, I was kind of mixed on it, because while it did show that Palpatine was a force to be reckoned with, towards the start of the fight scene, it did kind of seem like the Jedi were basically morons, how they just left their guard open and just were able to be taken out so easy. But in the years since, I've seen more of the context of this scene. Like at the start of the fight, when Palpatine does that really guttural, demonic scream, that's actually a force power, which I think is called Force Scream, which apparently separates the user between the Force, if only for a moment, which is kind of why Palpatine was able to take him out so easy after he did this scream. As well, you gotta think that these Jedi going into this scene were kind of a bit unsure whether he actually was a Dark Lord, because really all they kind of had to go on was Anakin say so. And up until this film, they hadn't really kind of put the most trust in him. And as well, the fact that the Jedi has said that the Sith haven't really existed in the last 1,000 years, so I imagine none of them really have any experience in facing a Sith Lord. But really, all this is well and good saying all these things, but the problem comes down to the execution. And while I know the context of all these different things going on, to the average viewer, this scene can seem really kind of just lazily done and really kind of bad choreography, which it can translate that way. I can defend this scene all I like, but if people don't know the context of the scene, then it is going to seem like a really sloppy lightsaber battle. Next, towards the end of the movie, we're treated to two lightsaber battles going on at once, two of the greatest lightsaber battles in all of Star Wars, and one of them being one of the greatest sword fights in any movie ever. Palpatine versus Yoda, two masters of the Force, one of the light, one of the dark, in an epic battle. And then, one of the scenes that the whole movie was leading to, Anakin versus Obi-Wan Kenobi. There are no words for this lightsaber duel. It is phenomenal. Now, this fight isn't 100% perfect. There are one or two things here and there which kind of let it down. And as well, the performances that the actors give before and after the duel are just some of the greatest scenes in all of Star Wars. The fact that after Obi-Wan beats Anakin because Anakin let his arrogance get to the end of him, and what Obi-Wan says next just always manages to tug at your heartstrings. Obi-Wan puts so much faith in Anakin to have it all shattered before him. The fact that he's basically not only lost his pupil but lost his brother as well is just nothing short of heartbreaking. And as well, the fact that Anakin is just fueled by nothing but hatred at the end. And then at the end as well, the movie manages to tie everything up leading into the original trilogy. And I gotta admit, some of it worked, some of it didn't, but for the most part, it manages to tie in beautifully to the original trilogy. Overall, guys, Revenge of the Sith is just a phenomenal movie. Easily my favourite Star Wars movie ever, and probably one of my all-time favourite movies as well. The performances are great. The CGI still looks amazing, though there are some kind of background animations and whatnot which do look a little bit choppy, but for the most part, all of it just looks amazing. The lightsaber duels are incredible. The lore expansion is amazing as well. The dialogue can be a little bit hit or miss, I will admit. There are some lines which I do think are a little bit undefendable, but it's not as terribly written as everyone says it is. As well, one more thing I do want to talk about, which I do think is quite funny as well, is the prophecy of the Chosen One, and how it's a great contradiction. The fact that the prophecy goes, the Chosen One will destroy the Sith and bring balance to the Force. Now, those two statements just contradict each other, because yes, the Chosen One could destroy the Sith, but destroying the Sith would not bring balance, because you cannot have light without dark, you can't have dark without light. If either the light or dark is gone, then it's not balanced. And again, it just shows the arrogance of the Jedi, the fact that they only want to listen to the part which really benefits them. Because if they stopped and thought about it for 1 second, they'd realise that the statement doesn't really make sense. But really as well, Anakin did end up bringing balance to the Force, because really, the Jedi had the majority, they were controlling the galaxy, and Anakin destroyed most of them, bringing balance to the Force. The fact that the light and the dark were now even, though obviously it was leaning more towards the dark because they now have the Empire, but really, the Chosen One fulfilled the prophecy. He brought balance to the Force, because really that is one of the things of the Force. If one side starts to take over the other, the Force will correct it. But do I think you guys should watch this movie? Absolutely. If you haven't watched Episode 3 or really any of the prequels, and you're one of these people who just say, oh, the prequels are bad, then just stop doing that. Just watch the movies for yourself and draw your own conclusion. Like I've said in my other reviews, just watch the prequels and enjoy them for yourself. Because the prequels are just not bad movies. They're not perfect, but they are amazing. Okay guys, that's my review for Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Do you love it? Do you hate it? What do you think I should watch next? Whatever it is, drop it in the comments below. Until next time, I've been Michael. See ya!